Cornwall's unique historical background. The collapse of mining in the 19th century not only undermined the Cornish economy, but also, it's been argued, created paralysis in terms of its political identity. It ensured that the old radical traditions associated with liberalism were to continue way on into the 20th century. There were occasional challenges. Labour in 1918 was at the forefront, not in places like Sheffield or East London where you might expect it, but actually in Cornwall, West Cornwall in particular. But emerging out of that, what we might dub the post-radical identity of Cornwall was not a challenge from Labour, a permanent challenge from Labour, but the survival of the Liberals on one hand and the strengthening and consolidation of the Conservatives on an anti-socialist platform on the other. That laid the basis well into the 20th century, and which after the Second World War you start to actually gradually see a challenge as the Liberal Party starts to recover, based very much on an anti-metropolitan platform, sustained by the continuing strength of radical non-conformity. The Liberal Party, for example, in the 1960s still actually had non-conformist Methodist ministers attending many of its election meetings. And that link to the past was to continue and provide a basis for the Liberals to survive and also start challenging the dominant Conservatives. Depends what you mean by different. In many cases, obviously, you've got Liberal versus Conservative versus Labour. More recently, obviously, the Liberal Democrats. But at the same time, it's where those voting alignments actually operate. The sense in which it is a Liberal, and now more recently Liberal Democrat, versus Conservative alignment, with the Labour Party actually in third place. That's something which, unlike other parts of the country, where you might see, for example, in the 1980s, the Labour Party being pushed in into third place in some parts of southern England, you actually see that as a permanent feature. In, for example, 1997, the great Labour landslide under Tony Blair, Labour takes one seat. Conservatives get wiped out, and the Liberal Democrats, the heirs to that Liberal tradition, are the dominant force. So I think in that sense it is unique. It's also unique in another sense, the existence of a small nationalist challenge. Less evident in parliamentary elections, but certainly within local government elections you might expect somewhere between 10 to 20% of those voters who are in position to actually support them voting for Mebby and Kernow. And I think that small difference, nonetheless put together, that collection of factors actually makes for a rather different political alignment in Cornwall. Good question. I think there's a variety of factors. Mustn't forget that the Liberal Democrats actually actually emerge as the largest party in terms of the share of the vote. But the reason, I think, is the fact that the Liberal Democrats became the dominant party in local government. Blame, particularly in terms of the unitary authority, was put on their shoulders for it being a failure, and I think that didn't actually help the Liberal Democrats. I think a sense too in which they have an opportunity to champion anti-metropolitan issues didn't actually work through in terms of a real genuine Cornish assembly, which so many people would actually look to. And remember too that the presence of Mebby and Kernow actually probably lost them some key votes. I think the key thing too to consider is how the votes match up in regards to the fact that as a result of 2010 we've got the Liberal Democrats in coalition with the Conservatives, the arch traditional enemies in coalition. Now, will there be a vacuum in Cornish politics? Who's going to fill it? Will Labour be able to actually come to the fore? Certainly the Cornwall Council election suggests that Labour's making a bit of a breakthrough for MK in certain areas. But at this stage it certainly appears that that's not necessarily going to be the case. But will that change come the next election? And obviously set against the background of this new recognition of special status for Cornwall, will that actually lead to change in the ballot box? Well, traditionally there's evidence again to suggest that fact. If you go back in time to the age of Isaac Foote, David Penhaligon, these are key individuals with that personal touch, with that personal rapport. It's certainly evident if you look at Cornwall Council elections where there's a strong independent tradition which actually exist, will and does that actually get transferred over in terms of general elections? I think the jury is out for that.